think for the things that make men attractive, assuming you're on a good path in life, I think that those traits grow like dramatically in your late 20s and early 30s, such that like if there's a guy that's really well put together, he can do his fucking laundry, he's got an apartment with more than just a box spring sitting on the fucking floor, and he's like not socially or emotionally retarded, I think that this guy can go into like a college and like pull like pretty well, just because he's got like, because as a guy, like the things that society or women tend to value from men are things that you like really start to build upon like in your late 20s, early 30s.
Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today, guys, we're really excited. We have a YouTuber that is known as Destiny. He has over 600,000 subscribers on YouTube. He talks about a variety of topics, including dating and relationships. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment under this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. Destiny, you go by Steven in real life. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited and I'm interested to know, because you've been at this for a while, and I'd like to know kind of how you got started and what motivates you to talk about the topics that you do.
Basically, a long time ago, a friend pointed out that there were kind of like some wacky, it might have been Korean people online that like did kind of this live streaming thing, and it was super new back then. Nobody really did it. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I was playing the game that everybody streamed, which was, well, for the few people that did stream, it was usually like StarCraft. And then I had the technical know-how to kind of like put together all the different programs to like stream and get all the stuff working together. And yeah, basically he said, like, you're funny when you play games in front of people, so you could probably do it online, and people think that's funny. And I started thinking sometime like middle of 2010, and then I've been doing it since then.
And you'll talk about gaming, obviously, but you'll also talk about politics and then dating and relationships.
Yeah, I've always had like a wide variety of interests. Like I don't think people should ever just be focused on like one thing. So even when I played StarCraft, like we were always talking about like random things in like science, politics, philosophy, whatever would like come up, you know, people would argue about, and we kind of shout at each other over while I'm playing games and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, because I feel like for most creators, like they end up on a very much a niche, and then they stick to that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So do you see that with other like streamers? Do they talk about a variety of topics, or are you a little bit unique in that?
It super depends on the way that you go about building your audience. Different people build audiences that watch them for different reasons. So there's like on the I used to have a long time ago, there were like 3 tiers of like people that would watch you. You've got the people that float in because you're doing some like extra special like big event. So you might be hosting like a big stream or like a boxing event or some just something that's really special that people hear about, they'll tune in, they want to see it. Then you've got like a group of people that will watch you like if you're doing a particular thing that they like. So for pro gamers, oftentimes you get viewers that would watch you because you're playing like whatever game they want to see. So Dota, StarCraft, CSGO, whatever. And then there's like this third bucket, and that's like the best one, and that's people that really like your personality, and they'll watch you basically no matter what you're doing. These are like your core viewers. And I think that the more personal that you get, and this is all very general because there's a lot of different types of content way to do it, but like ideally your goal is to get people to watch you because they like who you are and your personality, and that gives you the flexibility to reach out and kind of talk about and do more things. So
that makes total sense to me. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Because I'm interested to know, like, for guys that game, I don't game myself, but I feel like the gaming today looks like, you know, a headset and you're talking to other guys, right? Do you think that guys that are just gaming together, talking on headsets, is that like how they're socializing quite often?
Yeah, I think that there is a great deal of socialization that can be picked up there, and it's preferable to nothing, but it's not a substitute for real life socializing. So I think it's really good to meet new people and talk to people like that, but just the way that we interact online is so much different than the way we interact in real life. So it's good to make sure that's like supplementary to your real life interactions and not a total replacement for them.
Yeah, I think Todd could speak to that because we were talking about that the other day.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things I've run into in my practice is when I worked with a lot of young guys, that ended up becoming, especially during the pandemic, that ended up being their life.
Yeah.
They were either watching streaming or gaming all day long, pretty much, and taking breaks to go to the bathroom and eat and sleep, essentially. And so, I'm just like, this is not part of my world. So I'm wondering if you could kind of educate us on kind of the history of streaming and if you feel like it's an issue for a lot of young guys.
Well, I mean, for the history of streaming, I mean, streaming's probably been around now in a popular sense, probably for about 12 or 13 years, I think. It's definitely exploded. There was a huge bump in the pandemic, but it was like constantly growing, pretty consistently, I'd say, for the past like 10 years. There's always been like a new celebrity or new major A-list sponsor or whatever that's been involved, and it's kept growing and growing and growing. In terms of the other question you asked was the engagement that people have with it.
Yes.
I mean, there can be too much for sure. I will say that there's a little bit of, I don't know if it's like generational poisoning, where older people will look at like people on computers and they'll talk about how horrible and unhealthy it is. But I think that in general, I think we're very drawn to like screens and objects like that. Mm-hmm. And older people will say things like that, and younger people don't know any better. But as a millennial, I can call older people out because we used to do the same thing with a TV growing up, where people would sit in front of the TV for 6 or 7 hours and they wouldn't question it. But if you like are in front of a computer or a video game for 2 hours, they'll be like, "You're rotting your mind. It's horrible." And it's like, okay, well, that seems like unironically, you would hear growing up, like, "You're spending too much time on the computer, like, get off and go watch some TV or something." Like, you'd hear statements like that, and it's just, like, mind-blowing. Without getting too deep into things, I think there's probably something bad now, especially I see it with kids. I think that having screens in front of you too much is probably doing bad things to our mind. It's turning us into like these kind of like dopamine machines where we're pushing and getting instant gratification and feedback all the time. And I think that removing any friction from any pleasure or joy that you seek in life and then living that way for days, weeks, months, years is probably doing bad things, especially when you're seeing kids doing it now. I don't know how many times you guys go to a restaurant and you'll see like a 2-year-old with like a Nabby or an iPad in front of them and they're just like super glued to it. It's probably not good for them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a newer phenomenon or has been going on longer, where women go on Twitch, and I think it kind of started with gaming, but now it's to the point where there's individuals who just kind of stream, but they don't game. And so can you talk a little bit about that? And they make money off of this.
There's going to be there's a whole history to this, but essentially I would say that there was one streamer called Ice Poseidon who kind of kicked off all of that style of content by doing really wacky, crazy antics kind of on camera and on live stream that had nothing to do with video games. Back then they called it IRL streaming, so in real life streaming. Now on Twitch, I think they call it just chatting streaming, where you're just talking. But I would say that he kicked it off, and then you've kind of got like, there are different like time periods or eras of different types of that type of content blowing up and going away and blowing up and going away. And yeah, but that's like, there's a whole history to that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. But do you think it's here to stay now? Because a lot of times what I've read or heard is that a lot of these women will, if they don't do anything special, it's just kind of like a live on TikTok where they just kind of sit there and maybe read the comments, that type of thing, where they're not actually speaking about any specific issue, or they'll be doing their makeup or things like that.
It's going to depend on the type of streamer for what topics are coming up. Like I would say that it's probably pretty hard to not talk about anything. Like because there are guys that do this too. I mean, like arguably you'd say like this is kind of my style of content now, to where like I'm playing a game but not really. Nobody's really watching me because I'm playing my Factorio game for 10 hours. They're watching because of the conversation topics that are coming up.
Of course.
That style of content has definitely gotten way, way, way more popular. It's kind of funny, but at the inception of streaming, everybody was watching like pirated content, like movies and stuff, and then like wacky people talking about crazy things in front of a camera, and then gaming really took off, and then that became like the premier type of content. You want to watch people play games, and then with Ice Poseidon, the just chatting, like the chatting to the camera content, that started to take off again. And I don't know where the numbers are at now, but I know that talking to the camera content is getting more and more and more popular. I think people are associating that more with streaming now than just playing video games. So
okay,
I imagine we're probably going to continue on that trajectory just because it's more accessible to a lot of people, right?
I imagine too that on Twitch, is it mostly male dominated?
The audience is yes.
Yes.
My guess would probably be like 95-5 or maybe 90-10 maybe, but yeah,
Wow.
It's probably very, very, very male dominated. So like the women streamers that are really popular will oftentimes be the ones like in hot tubs or doing like stuff like that because your viewer base is like 95% men. So that's like the type of content they're watching women for, yeah.
Yeah, I found that in doing the little research that I have, that it's been a combination of kind of doing OF and streaming simultaneously for a lot of, kind of maybe the mid providers as far as income.
Yeah.
And then potentially they would get off streaming and probably just do OnlyFans if they got big enough. But there's probably so many women kind of in that group that just can't make it on OnlyFans.
Maybe,
So-
or like OnlyFans it's hard to advertise just in OnlyFans if you don't have anything else, right? Like you
Yeah.
could be the hottest girl in the world, and it's like, well, how are people going to find you? Like, how are they going to? Whereas, like, if you're like a decently entertaining YouTuber or something else, you can always promote like your side content, you know? Like if I were
TikTok
to
is a big way.
do what?
TikTok is a big way
TikTok
now.
could be, yeah. Anything where you can grow like a platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I could probably release an album and make more money than 99% of musicians just because I have a pre-existing fan base. It has nothing to do with my music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing with like people that do like OnlyFans and stuff. Like a person that's really popular on TikTok or YouTube or Twitch could start a site like that and do better than somebody like way hotter or whatever than them, just because they've got that pre-existing fan base. Yeah.
Okay. Makes
And
sense.
that mainstream platform. I mean, so many people are going to be on TikTok innocently. And I never knew about OnlyFans until I was on TikTok. And then I was seeing other women promote their OnlyFans.
Sure.
And I can imagine that even men could say the same, that they never even knew about OnlyFans
I
until
never
they
heard
were
of it.
on TikTok, liked a girl's comment or liked a girl's content and went to her page and saw that she had this other outside website and clicked on it.
The link trees. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The sneaky link.
The sneaky link. So I could see how like women are kind of invading then Twitch potentially because there's a huge fan base that's a potential. You know.
So, Stephen, do you see that as we try to live in a judgment-free zone? Do you see that as
I'm all
something?
about judging people, so.
Okay, well then you're the perfect person to ask. When it comes to women making their living on OnlyFans and streaming, you know, like provocative content, that type of thing, what's your take on that?
It kind of gets back to almost like a question around like pornography, basically. I don't have any problems with it. I think it's okay. I guess I would like to see some level of segregation. Like I think it's so if I were to have a problem with it, my problem is when a certain number of people do a thing, they can set an expectation even if they don't mean to. And I think something that's kind of annoying is if you're a woman creator on Twitch, there's almost like an expectation that when you hit a certain size, you're going to be creating like an OnlyFans because everybody does it. So I'd say like in terms of negative, like that'd be like one negative. Although I could hoist that responsibility on both the audience and the creators too, because the audience technically shouldn't be making that expectation, although it will happen.
So there's very few women on Twitch that are successful that don't have that push from their audience to go on OnlyFans.
It seems like it. It seems like that's pretty common for at least the mid-tier and some of the high-tier
Okay.
women streamers. Like I think there was I say study, but somebody did some jargon to figure out like who like the most influential streamers were, basically in terms of like the mentions they get in other chats or whatever. And I think for the women's side, I think Amaranth was, and she's also like the #1 OnlyFans creator. So yeah.
Okay. I guess my only concern about that is that prior to probably 5 years ago, there was in almost every city of decent size there was strip clubs and there's strip club culture, and it's in party cities like Miami or Vegas, or LA, or that's still happening. But when it comes to smaller cities like this, I really feel like all of the women that can make money on OnlyFans are moving to that and getting away, which makes sense because it's a lot easier, to end up, taking photos or whatever in your home rather than having to go to a trashy strip club with a bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
And
It's safer.
it's safer. So so my theory is that eventually like strip clubs are going to probably be extinct because of platforms like OnlyFans. And I'm wondering what your thought about that is.
I feel like there's pros and cons to both jobs. OnlyFans is nice because it's safe. You're just taking pictures of yourself. You get to choose when you want to work. There's all the benefits of being like self-employed. That's nice. Dancing is nice because you have like a guaranteed local audience though that you can like really heavily monetize. Like I know some girls that are they're not ugly by any stretch of the imagination, but like I don't know if they could make like an OnlyFans and make a ton of money off of it just because they're not like popular on any other platform. But they might go to another city and like dance like on weekends and make like $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 in a weekend depending on like the type of weekend and who they're dancing with and everything. So they're going to be, just because you have that local community, there are going to be some people that have the opportunity to do that with a local community that wouldn't be able to go on OnlyFans and do it as well. But then also there might be some women that don't want to go to the club or don't want to dance at a strip club or whatever, anything like that, and they might opt towards OnlyFans. But it's definitely going to be a thing that has like pros and cons to both of those.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because of the fact that for some guys who just don't have the ability to kind of get in relationships or even have hookups, it's one of those things. I have a friend who's in this camp, that he's actually been going to like the same club year after year, and he cultivates relationships with these women, and a lot of times you'll see them outside the club. And what he's described to me is that as each year passes, they're the same age, but as far as their level of attractiveness, it's like nosedived. And so my thought process is that the ones who were, very attractive, they've kind of gone to different platforms like Twitch
Possibly,
or like OnlyFans. And what's kind of left over is the people who couldn't, kind of make any money on those platforms.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I hate strip clubs, so I don't have like any experience with like that type of.
You're living in the wrong
stuff.
city, then, right?
Yeah, no, true. Well, I'm not a party person at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely an outsider there. But yeah, I mean, that could happen. I guess I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
I think it depends on your generation too, right? Like the younger generation, I think, are using more so the online sources of OnlyFans or whatnot, and they're not going to strip clubs.
Yes.
Whereas like the older generations, like, maybe because of its technology, but they're not getting on the OnlyFans accounts.
For sure. Yeah, that's the other thing he said is that the median age or something like that was like 65 or something. Where before it was guys of all generations.
Sure.
So, just kind of an interesting kind of thing I've observed. Again, I don't know if it's true or not, but I don't see OnlyFans going away. I see it getting bigger.
Probably everything on the internet seems to be, yeah.
But also diving deeper into that, like what we talked about, where at least at the strip club, like men can actually have a conversation with these women. Whereas like on OnlyFans, a lot of times when guys are DMing these women, the women are not even the ones responding. It's like their manager or some kind of, person that's managing the account.
Depending on the
for
size of
them.
the account, yeah, there'll be other people running the DMs, yeah.
Right. And so so not only is it a virtual relationship, potentially, like in some form relationship, but it's even like less real. And guys are getting, less from it potentially.
Well, I did a little bit of research on this, and I think it's once you get to a certain level, there's these guys who essentially like will take on like 50 girls, and they'll have a team that work for them as well, and they'll pay the team very low, but all they'll do is reply to DMs, and kind of create. So the only thing the women most of the time are doing, unless it's someone just starting out, is actually doing the videos or taking the pictures, and then there's a whole team that takes over from there. So the reality is that if guys are trying to find some kind of connection, it's bullshit. There's no connection.
Sure.
You're just talking to
Although
some
I feel
dude.
like there's probably not much connection in real life on a strip club either, right? Because these are women that are paid to be nice to you.
I think you'd be surprised. Like again, my buddy who's been going to like the same place for years. It's one of those things where he's like Norm on Cheers when you're young, but it's something where like everybody knows his name when he walks in the door. And it's something where they trust him, like they know he's safe, and so on
Sure,
and so
but like
forth.
let's say he ran out of money to give them.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so
he
I'm
knows
saying
that
probably, yeah.
for sure. I mean, he's doing really well for himself, so I doubt that's going to happen. And he's really cheap.
Sure.
So,
I mean, like if I find a girl on OnlyFans, I give her enough money, I can probably get some kind of personal relationship with her. But like there's going to be a cost because you're competing with everybody else, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But besides that, he's not attracted to women his own age, and he's not able to attract women who are younger. So for him, it's either that or zero.
Sure.
So he chooses that, and I don't judge him for it. It's one of those things where I don't think anybody's getting hurt.
Maybe. I feel like he's getting hurt, but
Really? Well, I mean, again, it's not like he's not tried. He's put a lot of effort into things.
How old is he?
He's the same age as me. So
How old are you? I have no idea how old you are.
I'm 53.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So
I would have guessed you were like in your like 40s, but okay.
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where he's got some social issues, and so it's something where even though he's done really well financially, it's been very difficult for him to get in any type of relationship. But ironically, he goes there and he goes time and time again, and again he's not spending a lot of money, but he's able to kind of forge these relationships. It's taken time, and then he like one of them he actually has gone over to Thanksgiving dinner with her family, and she's married.
That's so interesting to me, that whole dynamic.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's the thing. I guess the only thing that would worry me is,
And he's not into her, by the way.
Sure.
Like relationship wise, he
Okay.
just likes having sex with her.
There's a thing where if you form a bad habit, you can get really far sometimes with bad habits. This can be athletically, it can be artistically, it can be whatever. You can make it very, very far sometimes with bad habits. But because it's a bad habit, usually it implies you're doing something suboptimally, but you've like made it work. But eventually you're going to hit like a wall with it. And the thing that makes it really, really hard to switch off of bad habits is typically before you get better by switching to the better habit, usually you have to get worse, sometimes a lot worse to do it. So if you learn to throw a ball incorrectly, if you learn to run incorrectly, if you learn to do something musically incorrectly, to learn that is going to be painful. So oftentimes it's hard to get out of a bad habit because it's so easy to fall into the other one. So I guess my worry would be if someone's like, oh, I have a hard time doing social skills and talking to other people. And it's like, I can understand that feeling, but man, I feel like it'd be so hard to learn when you can just fall back into the other thing like instantly and then pay people and like have friends and like do that. That'd be my only fear. But I mean,
the irony,
it's his
though,
life. Yeah.
Yeah. The irony is though, is he's in sales.
Okay,
so like
sure.
when it comes to other guys or people that he doesn't find attractive, he's fine. It's just one of those things where it's always been kind of a barrier for him. But in that environment, he ends up, doing okay. But his concern is that, this is going away for me because all these women are not there anymore that used to be. And so, again, my theory is that it's because they're finding different ways.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
And so, hey, if it works for them, that's fine. My biggest concern, and I've always, I've had the same thing with women who dance, is the fact that if you spend from 18 to 28 doing that, what's on your CV? If you're trying to get a career.
True, but I mean, it's the same for dancing too, right? Like if you spend from 18 to 28 dancing.
Yeah, I was saying both things are similar.
Yeah.
And then it's one of those things where you've been doing that and you essentially have to start over, and then you have to kind of explain what you've been doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do you feel about that in general as far as...
I mean, that's probably going to be true for like everything, and like I'll broadly say like entertainment-wise, right? Like if you try streaming and you don't really make it for 5 or 10 years, you might not have much to show for it. If you try to do like sports, right, basketball, football, and you kind of fizzle out in college, you don't really have much to show for it. Anything. If you try to be an actor, writer, whatever, singer, if you don't make it, it kind of sucks. You have a huge hole in your.
But this is like a guaranteed expiration date. Where with a streamer and actor, there's a potential to actually grow and make that a career. But once a woman hits a certain age, especially a lot of women in this industry, there's a lot of drug use. There's a lot of, just drinking. There's lots of mental health issues. It's one of those things where if you're doing that long enough, then all of a sudden to work a 9 to 5 and potentially be minimum wage because you don't have any skills. And also, I think a lot of these women who are younger, which I think would be the same guys for guys as well, is they have access to a lot more money than most people, but they blow it on cars and dumb
I would
stuff
say
like
it's
that.
I would say it's the same as sports. Like you've got a limit on sports on how well you can do that.
Yes.
Sometimes you can get career-ending injuries before your career's begun in college, and. Man, I hear this number so much and I forget it. It's either like 50% or 70% of I think like NBA players are like bankrupt in like 5 years or something. It's like insane, yeah. So I mean it sucks. That's bad. I mean I'm not gonna disagree. Yeah, of course, yeah. You're definitely playing like the burning the fuse at both ends or whatever, and then hopefully you're smart and mature enough to save or figure something out. But you're not going to be when you're 23, right? So
of course, what I found is that. What ends up happening a lot of times is when the women kind of age out of that, that's kind of when they find that provider type that they're really not that attracted to, but is an engineer or something. And then they kind of settle down with that
Then they
person.
can have their family.
Yeah, then they can have their family.
Yeah, that's what I've seen too.
So, and if it works for them, that's fine. But I think that what happens is that in the past anyways, again, maybe this changed because of the dating market, is that there was a lot of guys who wouldn't want to hey mom, this is Destiny, for example. Like for some reason, Destiny's like a huge stripper name.
Sure. Okay. It is. I've heard that a lot. Don't worry.
So, but hey, you've made it your own, and that's huge.
But back then, like if they were working in a strip club, you could hide that more easily. Especially if you were like in another location. than where you actually had stripped.
Sure. I mean, you have to lie, though. I mean, obviously, you'd have a stage name and things like that, but at the end of the day, you'd have to tell, like, what you've been doing.
Well, you'd have to tell your to-be husband, potentially. But, like, his family, maybe not. But with these girls that are doing it online, like, that's almost impossible to do. I mean, all it is a quick Google search, and they could be found. Yeah. So I think they're pretty smart about it, though, aren't they? Like, as far as, like, using... Or is it just, could you find someone, for example, if you're an employer, through Google Images that would lead them to their OnlyFans, even if they have
it's just going to depend on, like, how big they get and the type of name they choose, right? There's a million girls on OnlyFans that you're never going to find through, like, trying to dox them or whatever. But if they get really big, or if you get unlucky, because sometimes it only takes one person to see something to be like, oh shit, I know you, and then now everybody in your life is going to know. So you're just kind of like rolling the dice on it, basically. Although it's not as catastrophic today, it's still probably going to, like, raise some eyes. But I remember back, even when I was a kid and a teenager growing up, like, the idea of, like, your nudes getting leaked online is, like, the end of the fucking world. It's, like, a catastrophic, like, horrible. And now it's, like, if it happens, it's kind of embarrassing. But, like, it's, like, so normalized today that people don't think as much about it.
That's a good point, and I think that probably rings true for the future, too, as far as OnlyFans. I think that it'll be so commonplace that I don't know if it will be something where a person wouldn't get a job because of that.
Probably, yeah, I don't think so. Even now, I'm not sure. Maybe it would depend. I will say, though, to be careful, though, because there's this concept. People have this this notion that, like, fucking, like, 40% of girls on college campuses are doing, like, OnlyFans, and they're making, like, a ton of money off it. It's still a very, very, very small minority of people that are even doing it, and then an even smaller minority off that are making money off it. I think I said that was, like, the joke that I gave before. It's like, it feels like when I listen to I don't remember if I said this on your show or if I was talking to somebody later, but it feels like people have this idea, like, the average woman wakes up at 7 a.m., like, posts, like, 3 pictures of her feet, gets, like, $700 for the morning, goes out and meets with, like, 7 Chad Thundercocks from Tinder, fucks all 7 of them, get them to write her school papers, does everything, comes home, takes, like, a few more pictures, makes another $1,000, goes to sleep, and does that until she's, like, 30, and that's, like, the average college girl's experience. Like, no, but it feels like people, when they talk about it, like, OnlyFans are removing all the women from the dating market, and all their perceptions are going to excuse. Like, I think it's a very, very, very small minority of people that are even doing OnlyFans. Like, there's not enough male wallets in the world to pay for 40% of women to be doing OnlyFans. I think as men we would run out of money eventually, but
yeah, that does make sense for sure. One of Alexander Grace's famous quotes is, "The most abundant resource on the planet is thirsty men."
Sure.
And so I think that I think that a lot of guys are doing it but not talking about it, because
potentially, yeah.
Do you think a lot of men are just being drawn to it? Like, more men that would just search on OnlyFans?
No, I think what happens is that they see some hot girl on TikTok.
Yes, and that's what I mean.
Then they say, okay, like, she's really hot. I would love to see her naked.
Yeah.
But, does she have an OnlyFans? So they go to her Instagram, and then they see that link, and it's one of those things where maybe they've been watching her for a while, and they're, fantasizing about what she would look like, and then all of a sudden, boom, your dreams get to come true for $6 or whatever.
That's what I mean. Like, I think more men are being pulled into that type of environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
about with your following, Emily, you could have a killer OnlyFans.
Yeah, I know. I've already, when you were saying, creators that are like, do you have an OnlyFans yet? Being asked that.
Has anybody asked you that?
Oh, yes.
For sure. Yeah, she has over 2 million followers, of course.
But what's funny, though, is that it was when I was more mid-range. I mean, I'm at 2.5 million now, but it was more so when I was under 1 million that I got those comments. And then I started, like, still kind of getting them, but then other people would comment, like, not here, man. Like, no, like,
because once you're, like, established as, like, a woman creator, people aren't, like, expecting you. It's almost like this. There's kind of this weird, like, dark side, I think, of the male psyche, where it's like, you're not going to make it unless you fucking strip for me. Like, I want to see you fucking naked. Like, do it. You're not going to be shit otherwise. But so, like, when you have these, like, mid-range female creators, like, that's, like, the driving, sometimes, like, force when people, like, typing and saying the shit. But if a woman's already got, like, a few million subs and, she's making, like, decent money or whatever, like, that pressure that some guys would want to exert to, like, make her, like, strip basically kind of goes away, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing with Emily is that she's the exact opposite of that. She's very girl next door. Like, I don't know if you've seen any of her content, but she never wears anything provocative.
Oh,
You know,
that totally doesn't matter.
no,
Sometimes some people are even more drawn to people like that. Sometimes people
That's
want to
true.
say those people even more.
I guess
negative.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, again, she's just like the anti OnlyFans. Even though that's why I was making a joke because of the fact that I know that's something you would never do ever.
Never. Yeah, everyone in my real life, and I think even online now, know that I would never do that. The technology's impact on dating and relationships, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that more is online, right? There's more dating apps. I forget the stat now. Is it like more than 50% of people meet online
It's like
through a dating
it's
site?
like, the last time it was checked, it was before the pandemic, and I think it was like
Yeah.
at high 50s. So I bet it's probably like 60 or 70%.
Yeah. Do you think, because then relating that to like the bad habits, and it's almost like having something that's just easily accessible compared to forcing yourself to go out in the world and actually approach a woman and talk to her. Like, do you think that there's some downsides to dating apps in that way?
I'm actually, you know what? I thought about this a lot recently, and actually had somebody talk to me about this. I'm going to take a stronger position on this. I think that online dating apps, I think, are generally overwhelmingly positive. I'm going to say that, actually. So I think that the way that it used to work was people didn't move around as much, and we had different community building things that happened, especially through like churches and like friends and friends, or friends of friends and family friends that used to exist that don't really as much anymore. I think it used to say that the majority of people would meet like new dating partners. I think it was usually through friends, like in friend groups. That's where we used to meet our partners. But as we've kind of become more atomized, we become more segregated, we're very quick to move off and live in these little apartments and work, and we don't really have churches anymore, and our friend groups are starting to exist more online. There isn't really like an opportunity, I think, in the real world to go out and actually find people of the opposite sex, especially depending on the type of guy you are. If you're working in like tech, like if you're a programmer or something, there's like one woman at work. You're like not gonna have much luck there.
And you may be working at home if you're a programmer.
Or work from home, yeah. So for a lot of these people, if you've stripped away like all of the old kind of like community infrastructure, they don't go to church anymore, they don't really have friends of friends anymore, and they're all living like scattered across the country. I have no fucking idea. Like, if it wasn't for an online dating app, like where would you even go to meet like a guy or a girl? I don't know what the answer to that would be. I had somebody pushed me on that. I think I was doing like viewer call-ins like 2 days ago, and he was like, "Hey, like people always shit on dating apps, but like, that's where I met my girlfriend. If there were no dating apps, what is the alternative?" And that's always so funny because I've always like struggled with it on stream. Like, I have no idea. Like, when you're in school, there's a million people to meet and talk to and date. But once you get out of school, especially if you're in a male-dominated industry, I have no idea where you go to find people. Because like you can give like the stereotypical answers of like go to like the bar, but I mean realistically, I don't know if that advice like
It's like one of the worst places.
yeah, and it's
I
like
think.
tell like a 500-pound dude. It's like, what do you need to do?
Yeah.
Like go like hit the gym and get shredded. And it's like, yeah, you could, but like the average like guy that's like at home that's never been in a bar or picked up a girl in a bar in his entire fucking life, like you're gonna teach this guy from zero to like PUA master in like 7 YouTube videos. Like there's no fucking shot. So I think in that sense, I think that the dating apps can be good and that at least they give you a place to find and connect to other people, because without that, I don't know like what the alternatives would be. But obviously, I would say that what we had prior, where people were just in large groups of people and they were meeting people face to face and getting that type of interaction, we were forced to have those types of interactions. That'd be preferable to what we have today, but it just seems like society's kind of changed a lot from back then.
It has.
Well, if there were no dating apps, I feel like there would be a push for people to go out
Would there be?
and meet. I don't
Yes.
know, like which one
Yeah.
came first?
Have you met
Dating
any of these
apps
guys?
or-
No offense, this is my fan base I'm talking about, but like, where the fuck? Because the problem is, to go back, we have a huge. I think this is like one of the defining problems of our like psychologically that exists right now across the world, and it's this lack of friction on every single thing we do, and the less friction on everything, the easier it is to do the easiest thing, and to choose otherwise is really, really, really fucking difficult. Because as humans, I mean, like if you think back to like how we existed in like fucking forests and shit, right? And you think of like, why does sugar taste so good? It's because it's very, very, very fucking rare. You're not gonna find these huge lumps of like processed foods and sugar everywhere, so of course they taste delicious. But like you don't even have any mechanisms in your body to fight against getting fat, because how the fuck would you get fat, right? You're chewing on like this uncooked meat all day. You're eating like roots and herbs and shit. Like it's just not gonna happen, right? But if you put that type of machine in another environment, and then you start removing all the friction. Here's a ton of sugar. Here's the opportunity to sit down all day. Here's the opportunity to live a life online where you can have maximum fun and entertainment through an infinite amount of videos at your fingertips, an infinite amount of video games at your fingertips, an infinite amount of online social interactions at your fingertips. If you have that in front of you, who's ever going to make the choice to like, I'm going to find clothes, get a haircut, look decent, go to a bar, have real life social interactions where I might get shot down, spend money on alcohol. Holy fuck. That's like such a hard choice to make. Not to say that like you shouldn't make that choice, but I think that on a macro level in society, we've kind of removed all the friction from a lot of the kind of like dopamine hits that we get, and it's made it really hard to choose to do something other than like the easiest, nicest, most like packaged thing for us to access on the internet, I guess.
For the majority of men, it doesn't work. And I would say for the majority of women, it doesn't work unless it's hookup culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious where the numbers are because
like women swipe on like 5% of guys, for example.
Women what? Oh.
Only swipe right on 5% of guys, like on Bumble or Tinder.
Is that
where guys are 50%.
Well, is that bad? I'm trying to do the I hate stats; they're so complicated. But because theoretically, if 100% of women all swiped on 5% of guys, you could still have every guy getting swiped on, right? It's not like 100% of women are only swiping on the same 5% of guys, right?
No, that's what's happening. It's only the same.
No shot. I don't believe that. I don't think so.
Well, that's what the data says.
That it's only on those 5% of guys?
That's the top 5% of guys that I think get like 95% of the matches. And then after that, it's like there's another tier, but it's much less. And by the time you're like below 50, it's like 10 guys for every one woman. And then the other thing is that the way that Tinder is, for example, it's 25% women. So
yeah.
75% guys.
Yep.
Sure.
So
it's definitely rough, but I don't know, like if you took Tinder away, I don't know if these guys are going to like get out of the house to go and find people. It feels like we don't have any like real life places to send people.
Yeah.
Like well, I'm a really social person. I like talking to people. It was fun. Like and I have no idea where I would go. Like I talked to there's a guy called Playing with Fire, Alex. I want to do this at some point.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
he's been on our show.
Yeah, I want to like go to bars and like try to pick up chicks. It would just be a really fun skill to
he's
learn.
in Miami too, so you can do it.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about it. It would be a fun thing to do, but like I've never done that before in my life. It would be a totally new environment for me. Like absent like online stuff, I have no idea like what communities. Like I'm way out of school. My work is cheating, so I won't do my work. But like if I was like, let's say I was a programmer or something, I wouldn't meet a single woman at work. Like I don't even know where the fuck I would go. I have no idea. The honest to God, the most, is funny as it is to say it because I hated doing this, the most I've ever had women just like cold approach me, my entire life was dyeing my hair blue. Because
really?
now a lot of people randomly, have
no, why? Because it's a niche market.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So if you're looking at, a lot of women are like, oh my God, I like your hair. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I've never had people say that to me before. So
But so from my experience, for example, most of my dating experience in my 20s and 30s, there wasn't an online. So I had to do that, and everybody else had to do it, and we did it. And it was one of those things where one thing I liked about it is the fact that let's say I remember like I had a relationship with a woman when I was like 29, and we met in a bar. And it wasn't a club, it was just a bar where you play darts and drink beers or whatever. But I remember, because of the fact that we both didn't have a lot of other options.
Yes.
It was one of those things where we gave it a real shot, and it ended up lasting a couple of
both
years.
Of you. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because you don't have the other options there. It's like, that's why I always tell people, we might have spoken about this, how people are way too selective when it comes to the people they think they want to like pair off with. Because you think like, no MAGA Republicans, no women with dyed hair, no vegans, no, but like people will have like these huge checklists. It's like, you have no fucking idea until you meet somebody. There's a reason why 99% of people in grade school and in high school and in college will have a group of friends, and none of those people are selected for on any trait except for age and zip code, I guess, right? But you're thrown in with all random people, but eventually you like make friends. It'll happen at work, it'll happen in school, and if there are no alternatives, like I remember growing up, like you'd even do, it feels so weird because it's almost like another world, but like we'd go to like the bowling alley and there'd be like a lot of different people there. You'd go to like house parties, you go to like people's houses and actually see people in real life. And just by virtue, if you put somebody around somebody long enough, eventually they're going to start fucking, eventually they're going to start dating. Like that's like a rule of the world.
Yeah, makes sense.
But now with all of these incredibly attractive, like I didn't have really the option to like play like League of Legends for 16 hours a day growing up. That type of environment didn't really exist, but now it does. And there's billions of dollars behind making it as attractive as possible to you and as accessible and as easy as possible. So it's really hard to fight against those environments, you know? So like when you say, for instance, like of the viewer base or the user base on Tinder, 25% of women, where the fuck are all the women at then? Where are you supposed to go out and find them?
Yeah, I think they're out there. I think what's happening is that, at least from a lot of the women I've talked to or counseled, is that they are on Instagram and they're getting DMs from guys on Instagram, and that's how they're meeting. Because they don't want to go on the dating apps, but if they have a good Instagram, they will get DMs. And maybe it might be a lot or it might be a little, but it gives them an opportunity. And, you know, that's kind of the scariest thing. We did a whole couple actually, about monkey branching is, you know, if your girlfriend has this really provocative Instagram account, she's going to get DMs. And if you're in a relationship with her, especially if she's not posting with you or things like that, like she's essentially single. Do you know what I mean? So
she'll be treated that way. Although I will say, have to be careful because men definitely did that in the past too, to where if you've got a wife, she's at home, gets kind of boring, but you're working a lot. Hot secretary shows up. Like a lot of guys will leave their fucking wives, or like not leave technically. Usually it'll just be like affairs and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always something you kind of have to balance out, is the idea, the prospect of like people upgrading, especially in my industry, or anything in entertainment, where if one person grows more than the other person, all of a sudden there could be like or if you've got like two obese people and one person starts losing a lot of weight, the other doesn't. Like, yeah, that's definitely a thing to keep in mind. Setting appropriate boundaries and stuff for managing online relationships is probably really important. Yeah.
But I think that's kind of where the women are, because I don't know what the stats breakdown is, but my assumption is that there's many more women on Instagram than there are guys.
There are. And I think there's multiple reasons to why a woman would just keep her Instagram going versus jumping on a dating app. And that's, well, she already has it up, right? It's like less work than actually creating a separate account on a dating site. But then also for any man that reaches out to her, like she can go to his account and potentially see more about him compared to on a dating site where he can provide like limited information, you know?
Yeah.
And I think
so it's still pictures, but at the same time, it might be pictures of his family or,
you know,
prove they're not a fucking serial killer.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That they're pre-selection is involved, because maybe if there was a ex-girlfriend still on there, that type of deal. So it makes sense for women to do that versus be on the because on the dating apps they get spammed. Yes. And then what ends up happening is that, you know, they just pick the most attractive guys, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think that...
So that's human nature.
Yeah, I would say for women's main complaint on dating sites, it's a few things. It's one, it's not a relationship thing, you know, with that guy that is reaching out to her. He's just looking to hook up with her, and he makes that clear in the beginning. Like there's red flags with that, and she's there for a relationship. So she gets tired
hold on.
of...
Firstly, that's awesome. Okay. If a guy is willing to make it clear in the beginning, the girl should be thankful for that, because a lot of guys will fuck with you and like pretend that they want to date. Yeah,
there's a lot of those guys.
That is very true. I totally agree with you on that. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
To be upfront and honest, yes. But from like a girl's perspective, she just gets tired of it either way. That, you know, she's looking for one thing, and then she just keeps on getting reached out for another. And then secondly, there's also plenty of people that are like in open relationships just looking for another partner. And somehow...
But it's more sexual, obviously, versus having a real connection.
Right.
The fucking stereotype that I always hear is there'll be one girl who's like pretty fucking hot, and sometimes she doesn't always even have it in her profile, but they're shopping for it. They call them unicorns. They're looking for another girl that wants to be like a third and like some threesome. But then when you finally see the guy, there's a reason why there were no pictures posted of him, because he's a fucking uggo. It's like some Shrek shit going on, and it's like, what the fuck, yeah.
How does that happen?
I don't know, but I've heard there's a lot of that going on, where if there's one girl and she's shopping for a threesome on Tinder and there are no pictures of her boyfriend, it's because he's fucking, there's some shit going on.
There you go. Look out for those.
Yeah. So I'm wondering from your perspective, because you know you've got this huge following, not only from from YouTube, but from other platforms as well. And you've got a big name, and I don't know if you have an Instagram, and I'm assuming you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that kind of how you find the majority of your sex?
It depends. So that nowadays, I would say it comes through like my career. Like people know who I am, so they'll like reach out on Instagram or email sometimes, or just like random shit. Or I'll see people like at conventions or whatever. Sometimes it's like other streamer people. Just depends on what's going on. But and this is why we need better data on this. There needs to be better research on like the Tinder shit and everything. When I was in California, I was going through like a phase of my life. I just moved from Omaha to California, and I wanted to find people that like were not in the streamer world. This is going to sound really self-aggrandizing, I guess, but like there's a feeling when I talk to a stranger who doesn't know anything about me that's actually like really cool sometimes. Because oftentimes like I start talking to a girl and she's like, oh yeah, like I'm a big fan of you, like remember when you said this and did that, and it's like yeah I was there, I remember. Yeah, I do remember.
We joked about that yesterday.
No, I'm not like knocking you guys,
because that's what's happened to Emily a couple times.
Oh sure, yeah people know your stuff, and sometimes it's fun to be like, oh, like I can reveal pieces of my life to somebody, and it's like I feel like I'm back in high school, like I'm talking like a normal human being to somebody. So I would do Tinder a lot in California. I wouldn't mention that I was like a streamer or a YouTuber. Well, back then I was mainly just a streamer. And I did okay. I'm not like, like smashing like fucking 9s and 10s constantly, but like there were at least like 3 or 4 girls that I was friends with and had like long-term-ish kind of sexual relationships with. That was like super fun for me, that I really enjoyed. So like I've done the Tinder thing. Now it's mainly just like Instagram stuff. Now I've gotten bigger that like people will recognize me anyway. So I don't know if I'm sorry, it sounds super obsessed, but like I don't know if I trust all the time. We're like, oh, I have no idea who you are, blah, 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 blah. So now it's mainly just like fans or streamers or people that are kind of in this world already too. Yeah.
And that probably has helped a lot. Like, because I feel like for men that are aging, a lot of times their options and opportunity, especially on dating sites, decreases.
Maybe up to a certain age. I think if you're a guy, I feel like up to 35, I think you're still probably pretty good to like reach pretty low into the 20s, I think. Because I think that for the things that make men attractive, assuming you're on a good path in life, I think that those traits grow like dramatically in your late 20s and early 30s, such that like if there's a guy that's really well put together, he can do his fucking laundry, he's got an apartment with more than just a box spring sitting on the fucking floor, and he's like not socially or emotionally retarded, I think that this guy can go into like a college and like pull like pretty well, just because he's got like, because as a guy, like the things that society or women tend to value from men are things that you like really start to build upon like in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, right? Maybe even past that if you are still building whatever. So yeah, I think the guys are generally okay into their 30s. It's not as scary. Now, if your life sucks, like your 30s are kind of like an amplifier to your 20s, right? Like if your 20s sucked, your 30s are probably really going to suck unless you're doing something to turn it around. But if you're building in your 20s and your 30s are probably going to go really well. Yeah, I would just say kind of probably depends on how your life is going. I compare it to work from home, where like work from home, if you have like a really active social life and everything before the pandemic and you're doing work from home, it's like even better. It's a huge amplifier. Like now you can see friends whenever. Now it's fucking awesome. But if you had no friends, you weren't getting out very often. Dude, I had people sending me emails that like the Starbucks barista that I saw on my way to work was the only human contact I had, and I haven't had that for 8 months. The only person I see now is my DoorDash driver if I run out in time to see him when they drop my shit off. And it's like, yeah. So yeah, it super depends, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's happening more and more often as far as, so, for the Gen Z type of guys, because I've worked with a lot of them, and, again, of the sample sizes, people are coming to me, so there's some issues, clearly, but at the same time, I think there's also a lot of guys that are in the same boat but don't come to me. And so, and the reason they come to me is saying, I'm depressed. And then I'll kind of break down their life, and I'll say, okay, tell me about your life. And they'll say, well, kind of like the story you talked about, except for the male version, is that, they get up, and if they're in college, they're taking online courses, but they have like 3 screens open. And sometimes they'll be so smart about it that they'll take like a screenshot of them and replace that in the Zoom link. So the professor doesn't even know that he's not listening while they're playing, one of the video games. And a lot of these guys, it's just so commonplace now, barely ever leave the house. Yeah. And they don't even take showers on a regular basis.
Yeah, because why would you if you're never leaving and you live alone, right? Yeah, I can. No, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't take showers. But yeah, I can understand like.
But a lot of these guys are still living with their parents.
Sure.
Doing that.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So it's the combination of living with your parents and then not really leaving the home and not showering. And then you have to, but it's so commonplace. I'm not saying everybody's doing it, but comparatively to your generation or mine, way, way more.
Yeah, I mean, housing has gotten more expensive. Everybody wants to live in like 10 different cities in the United States, and that's the only place we want to go to. It's a bad trend for sure.
And these were guys that typically were gaming for multiple hours.
They were gaming or they were watching streamers for multiple hours at a time. You know, weed smoking was a lot. That kind of went hand in hand with that as well.
Yeah.
So it's something that, you know, because one of the concerns with, you know, kind of the rise of all these lonely single men was that there was going to be uprising in the streets. And, you know, with some of, you know, the kind of incel guys, that has happened as far as shootings and things like that, where they've written manifestos about, you know, kind of the way it is. But I think the majority of guys is that they've gone inward, not out in the streets and rioting, because of the fact that they're not able to connect. So they do the streaming, they video game themselves, they go on OnlyFans, you know, that type of thing. And it's almost becoming like the norm, but they're not healthy in a way that they're able to have a conversation like we're having right now. Or even to have showered to do that.
I think there's a huge problem with like emotionally retarded men.
But don't you think like men at their baseline are kind of emotionally retarded?
I don't think it has to be that way. I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into there's so much that goes into this. Like I've heard, for instance, that men tend to be more physical when it comes to expressing emotion. Women tend to be more verbal when it comes to expressing emotion. If you have a little girl that is like crying or having an emotional outburst, there are like ways where she's like consoled through that. Like, this is how you process emotions, this is how you do things. So women like grow up and not naturally. Women grow up and they're trained to have like a better
socialized
handle on like how to do it. Whereas for like boys, like usually we want to punch something or hit something or throw something, and you're immediately like, there's never a healthy, like parents won't buy you a punching bag. They'll tell you to stop hitting the wall or stop throwing things or do whatever. So you're very much like shut down at an early age and stunted kind of emotionally as a guy, and you're trained that way, socialized to grow up and not know how to process emotions. I think that some things that explain the differences between behaviors between men and women can go through the emotional maturity that both sides have. And I see this huge gulf sometimes in the emotional maturity between men and women that make it hard for men to talk to women and make it hard for men to talk to themselves, like other men sometimes. So here's a stat. I think that it's like 37% of single women are okay being single and don't care. And I think that number is like 24% for men. And one of the explanations I've heard for that is that women friendships are really, really awesome.
Yeah.
When you're a woman, you go out with somebody, they come back, what'd you guys do? How did you feel? What are you going to do in the future? Blah, blah, blah. Sure. You know, like all these things or whatever. And it's like for a guy, like he might be like ready to fucking kill himself tomorrow. He's drawing the plans up, you know, and his friend's like, how you doing, dude? And he's like, okay. And it's like, all right.
Yeah.
And that's like it. And you can see this in the differences of so many things. Like, for one guy to talk about his sexual relationship with his wife to another guy is like an almost unheard of thing. It's very rare that men will share sexual things about it. But for women, it's super common. So common that sometimes...
So common.
Yeah, they're like showing fucking like, yeah, here's my dick. My husband sent me this yesterday. Like, isn't this like cute or blah, blah. Like, they're just like, they're way, way, way more open about it. And it sucks because on one end, for like, I'll say like the left, there's like no examples for positive masculinity because they hate fucking men, okay? I know they don't really, but like they spend so much time focusing on like the toxic aspects of masculinity, they don't really talk about like how to do it positively. And on the right, they try to make it sound like, well, this is just the way that men are. They are toxic. They're saying this is the way men are and they're supposed to be that way. And it's like, well, come on. Like you, like sometimes it feels like from the red pill perspective, like a guy can be one of two things. He's either this fucking stoic, like Chuck Norris, like nothing bothers me, like fucking I watched my whole family die in front of me yesterday. I'm eating a steak right now. I don't fucking care. I'm just moving forward as a man. Or you're like a blubbering crybaby, you know, blue-haired fucking loser with a septum piercing who just cries when he sees a puppy on the street, right? And it's like, no, like, come on. There can be like a middle ground where you're a guy who, when you talk to a woman, you can have like an emotionally available conversation. You don't have to be crying all the time or whatever, but you have to be able to fucking communicate without expecting the woman to be your mom or without you coming across like a fucking sociopath. And, yeah, whether it's those early aspects of socialization as children, whether it's like the media we consume or the content creators that are speaking to like men, I feel like there's just so like horrible. There's like no guidance for like how men can kind of be like emotionally open and available to people, and they just get such horrible messages from both sides. It really drives me crazy. And then to wrap it all around, I feel like that contributes a lot sometimes to the unevenness in dating markets, to where women are more content being single and be like, oh fuck it, like I got really good relationships with my girlfriends. And for men, it's like the only time I've ever been able to emotionally open up to anybody in my life is when I have a girlfriend. If I don't have that, I'm like fucked, you know. And it's like, geez, yeah.
Yes. No, I totally agree with that. I do see that getting better, though. And I honestly think one of the reasons is the manosphere, is that you see other guys talking to each other, and it's one of those things where it kind of makes it okay. And so, like, I've noticed that at the gym, for example, after my workouts, I'll go into the sauna, and we'll have like, it's almost kind of like a bar atmosphere in a weird way, because the lights are dim and you have that,
and you're like chilling, and
you
you
get
just
the
work
buzz
out.
from working out. And so guys will open up. But what I'm noticing is that's not the younger guys that are talking. It's the middle-aged guys and the older guys that are talking. But one of the research I've done is that the difference between men and women is that women are very comfortable having face-to-face conversations like you and I are right now, where men are very comfortable having side-to-side conversations.
Okay.
And so that's why, like, the bar is a popular spot, because you can watch the game or whatever, and the guy's sitting to your right, and you're having like these in-depth conversations, but you're kind of staring at the game. And I don't know have you ever heard of men's sheds?
No.
Okay, so they're like a big thing. They started in Australia, and they're all throughout Europe now. Of course, in the United States, like it's the last country to really adopt this. But essentially what they are is that these sheds that are for men to work together, and they, sometimes they have like beer there, sometimes they have just coffee or food, but men work on projects together. But the whole reason for them is for men to get together and be able to socialize. And it's been really effective in these countries. Again, it's just a shame that a lot of, and any guy who's a guy, no matter what, obviously their socioeconomic status is or whatever, is invited, and there's no cost. And so it's something that I think those are kind of great ideas, because typically, again, you're not going to see two guys going out for coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's way healthier too, because the typical is go to the bar and drink.
Exactly.
Like there's always alcohol involved.
Yes.
I feel like.
Well, with guys, I think it's either there's alcohol, even when they golf, a lot of times there's alcohol, but it's usually around some kind of activity. And I think that's why the gaming thing is a big deal, because you're focused on the game, and even if you're not in the same room, you're still having conversations. And I bet that's probably where the streaming thing came in. It was because of the fact that maybe the games just weren't enough. Now you wanted that.
Maybe, yeah. This is hard, and I don't know, because I think I have massive ADHD.
Okay.
So I don't know how much of this applies to all men, or if it's just my brain. Just recently I was in Georgia, and I had a friend, because I've always wondered if I have ADHD. And I was like, oh, you should try some of my Adderall or whatever. And it's like, okay, fine. And I tried a pretty hefty dose. I had this XR stuff, and man, for the first time in my fucking life, I went out with some friends, and I just sat there, and I was so chill, and I was present, and I was content to like listen to everybody. If two women can talk to each other and just like be totally engrossed in that conversation, that's a very enviable skill to have. Because like if you're, this is very rarely do I give like, you follow this advice or kill yourself. Okay, this is one of those things where like if you go on a date with somebody, if it's like first, second date, if you pull out your phone one time, the amount of like fuck you, I'm bored that you're sending to that other person, it's over. It is like the worst. Unless it's like literally like, hold on, like I think my daughter is dying, I need to check something.
Sure.
Like don't even like a glance. It just communicates like this horrible message. I'm guessing that like guys are probably a little bit more scatterbrained in general, or like we're a little bit more all over the place. So maybe guys don't mind it as much when they're like doing an activity and like doing something else. But like that's very much my mindset, and I have trouble even connecting my wife sometimes, because she wants me. I joke with her where I was like, okay, you want us to go out to eat? You want me to fucking stare at you for an hour? You know? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, I can't do that. I want to kill myself. Okay. I'm like, I can't do that with any of my guy friends even. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah,
especially with your guy friends, I would think that would be more uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a guy thing or if that's like an emotional condition thing or what, but yeah, being able to have like conversations with people where you're just like staring at them and like talking to them and being present, that's a really good skill. If you can do that as a guy, you're ahead of so many other guys when it comes to like communicating with people. Holy shit. Yeah.
Even on the phone, because I mean, I'll talk to my friend, my female friend, for like an hour on the phone. Easy.
Guys don't
like,
do that.
I don't think any guy does that.
We used to.
Yeah.
I remember that shit. Yeah, because they would call, and as soon as the girl would call, you'd have to sit there and you'd have to wait for like 20 seconds because you're waiting to hear the fucking phone click to see if mom or dad picked up, if they were going to listen on the conversation. Yeah, I remember that.
I remember that
way back in the day. Just as the dating standards started, I was sometime around when I was in high school. I think the iPhone came out in 2007. I think.
Yeah.
That's when I graduated high school. It's 2007.
Okay.
Texting had just become a thing, and like when I was like in like the middle of high school, like my sophomore and junior year. What a horrible fucking thing. Sometimes you could be girlfriend, boyfriend, and not talk to each other for like 3 or 4 days, and it would be okay. But as soon as texting, dude, that changed in like 1 year, where it was like a requirement that you had your phone constantly, and if you weren't like, if you went like a night without saying goodnight or I love you or whatever, it's like fucking game over and shit. Yeah.
Yes. So that's totally changed the dynamic of things as well. So it doesn't help guys, become more social. It becomes less because everything's through text or chat or whatever. And then it's something where, you don't have to have that face-to-face contact, and you can take as much time as you want to respond to these messages.
Again, the friction thing, right? You get to do everything at your convenience whenever you
Yes.
want to, right? It's like literally like walking up like 10 flights of stairs, or it's like taking an elevator so that you can like walk up like a Stairmaster, right? It's like that's what our whole life has become, is taking the elevator to get to the Stairmaster. Like having that choice on everything, I think, is kind of like fucking our brains over,
Yeah.
What's interesting about that, though, especially for guys on dating apps, a main complaint that I hear is that they hate texting that woman. Like they would rather just have a phone call, get to know her a little bit and then meet in person, or meet in person like right away as soon as possible. They would rather just use text to like set things up. That it's more her that like is pushing the texting back and forth first.
That's a hard one. I'm curious what the rationale would be, because like I could see good and bad. Like one might be that I just want to see her in real life as soon as possible so I can fuck her, because fuck everything else. Another thing though is like, and this is something even I figured out pretty quickly, is you have to move to real life or off Tinder texting pretty quickly, because I found when I was in California, you can get stuck in conversation loops, and like when you're talking to a girl for like 3 weeks on Tinder, like nothing is ever coming of
Things
that.
just get boring.
Yeah, and it's
then
like
it'll
we've
fizzle
like
out.
exhausted everything. We haven't fucking seen each other, and nobody wants to say at the end of like their 22nd day of talking, like, hey, do you want to get a coffee or something? Like, it's just kind of weird at that point.
Yeah.
So that's definitely true. Although I will say, god damn, guys suck at fucking texting. Holy shit. I'm very lightly bisexual, kind of. So like I've spent time on Grindr and I've spent time on Tinder, and oh my god, the difference in messages from women on Tinder versus guys on Grindr, it's like unbelievable night or day. I could say that it might just be like gay community people are just really bad at talking, but like I've done like a little dating show sometimes with a friend, and we like take like messages, and people will like call in and they'll show us shit, and sometimes like guys will miss the most insane shit in text, or they'll just say something where it's like, bro, when you say this, you understand it's like the rudest fucking thing ever. Yeah, but again, I think it goes back to that socialization or training, to where men just don't like learn those communication skills or develop them enough, and the only people that want to teach them are like very, 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 very far left people that seem to have like negative views of men anyway. So yeah.
Do you think that they have enough motivation to like care to know how to text well? Because when I hear those complaints from men, oftentimes it's like, why does it matter? Like how I say something specifically via text. Why does it matter if I text her every 2 hours? Like those aren't the things that I want to have to do.
I mean, it doesn't like it shouldn't be like I have to text every 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
But like if you're having a conversation in text, like you have to be somewhat engaged. Like obviously not overly engaged. Like if a girl is sending you like 1-word responses and you're sending like 3 sentences or paragraphs, or you're probably not doing a good thing. But yeah, fuck, I don't know. I've seen so many. Fuck, I wish I could think of some examples right now. I should have brought samples, but like sometimes guys are just really, really, really bad at like following a conversation or like giving like a genuine response, and yeah, I don't know.
I've heard that from a lot of women, but then I've also heard that from men, especially like the initial conversation is that the first message, sometimes that they'll get even from Bumble, because the woman has to message first, they'll get just a period. That's
because women, but that's, so it's different. Men suck because I think they have emotional communication problems. Women suck because they've got like 50 million men. So it's like, yeah, you're just like,
that's a good point.
It feels degrading sometimes, especially like I'll sound self-aggrandizing again, but like obviously like I can do really well because of who I am as like a streamer and everything, and I've got a lot of access. But like if I go on Tinder and I decide to not put my YouTube or Instagram or whatever, like the amount of work that I have to do to talk to somebody is like fucking insane, and I'm like, this is wild. Okay, but I understand why, and it's because they've got like 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 other guys that are also competing for their attention. So you're definitely playing from behind as a guy where you're trying to like peacock, like, look at me, I swear to God, I'm special compared to all these other guys messaging you. Although once you get your foot in the door and the conversation start, usually you're okay. But you definitely have to get that like hook in initially. Otherwise you're just going to get lost in a sea of fucking whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But not everybody can, so they can get to your level. It's going to be like a very small percentage.
For conversation wise or for like streaming and shit?
No, I think conversation wise people can level up, but I'm talking about like streaming and things like that.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So I don't know if if your experiences are probably the best. I think when you've taken your handles off, then that's more of a realistic feel of what you would get if you didn't have that
Yeah,
clout.
for sure. And when I was in California, I did it without handles because I wanted to meet people that wouldn't. So there's like a lot of competition for sure. But the luckiest, honest to God, sometimes you find a girl who is like, oh, like this is my first day installing Tinder. Those were the best because you weren't competing with a million other people yet. And then also every now and then you'll just be able to connect on, if you can connect on like one fucking topic that you can drill into a little bit and then you get like a conversation started. Hopefully you can smear that into like a phone number or something within like a day or two and then you kind of go from there. It's possible, but I'm also like, I'm a very relentless person and that like I can handle like 50 people rejecting me or ignoring me or unmatching me and it's like I don't care, I'm not going to take it personally. So like I had no problem like swipe right on like fucking 500 girls in a week, chat up like 30, 40, 50 of them. Almost all of them either stop responding or blocking me, and then like maybe like one or two will be left at the end of all of that. But like if I'm putting in a decent amount of work, like one or two different girls to meet up with like a week, I mean, for not to throw myself under the bus, but I'm not like a fucking Chad Thundercock. Like that's really good for me if I'm not advertising socials or whatever. Like especially in California, like I consider it to be really, really successful. If I can meet one or two different girls every week and chat. So, but yeah, again, like I'm willing to cast a really wide net. I'm very like tenacious. Like if I get rejected, I'm not going to get hurt or whatever. And then I just like keep going and see what happens. Yeah.